One singles final down and one singles final to go at the Miami Open. The men's final takes place on Sunday between Roger Federer, the 20-time Grand Slam champion, and John Isner, the defending champion, which I'm not sure how many people would have predicted, to be fair, but all credit to him. Welcome back to the tennis vlog, guys. For the second time today, I did a live stream previewing and predicting the women's final earlier, and I'm very pleased that I managed to get that in because the daring nature of the prediction somehow paid off and Ashley Barty walked away with the trophy earlier on. Now I'm under all kinds of pressure to keep backing this up, so bear with me. Don't worry if you're not watching this live, you can come back later and watch afterwards, and hopefully I won't ramble too much and therefore there won't be too much to sit through. Again, apologize for doing the live stream. I only live stream when either I want it to be interactive or when I'm just short on time and a live stream is better than no video at all. So that's why you've got a live stream here. Sorry I couldn't pre-record, but this is the next best thing. So let's get straight into the preview of what could turn out to be a really decent final. Federer versus Isner, a player who's had a couple of wins over him before, who won, I think, the most recent meeting, and we'll have a closer look at the head-to-head in just a short amount of time. He did indeed, I think, but it was a while ago. So, Federer versus Isner for the Miami Open title, ATP Masters 1000 events. Both of them have come through 5 matches to get here. Had to check myself there because both of them as seeded players got a first round bye. Federer is the number 4 seed and John Isner the number 7 seed. So, as we do, we're going to take a look at how both players got to this stage of the events, the kind of opposition they came through, how they performed as much as I was able to watch them and take in what they were doing. Then we're going to see how they'll measure up against each other and who I think, in the spur of the moment, will come out on top. And my predictions, I hardly dare to say it, but my predictions in finals have been my best so far this year. I don't think I've got one incorrect yet, so I mean, now I've said that, I'm clearly going to get this wrong, but we will see. We'll base it on the information and the stats and everything I've seen so far this tournament. Let's start with John Isner, the lower ranked player here. And again, during live streams, I have the stats down in front of me because it generally means that I haven't planned as much or I've been too busy. So we've got things down in front of me just so it doesn't go too terribly. So John Isner has not dropped a set in Miami. I know that Isner has a lot of haters, but I am impressed at his consistency. I mean, yes, he's played 9 tiebreaks and people get at him for needing to play tiebreaks, but he's won them all. He has won them all, 100% perfect record, which even the biggest servers, Ivo Karlovic and the like, would be very, very happy with that. Just because you're a big server and you can often get to tiebreaks doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hold your consistency throughout the whole tiebreak. So good on John Isner. He launched his campaign in the second round with a straight sets win, tiebreak over an Italian. Not even going to try and pronounce the name. I'm not familiar with the player he beat, although I think I caught some of that match. And then in the third round played Albert Ramos Vinolas, who is a better player on clay, to be fair, but has had big wins over the top players before, so definitely no pushover. Credit to Ramos, he was the only player to not get to it. I mean, it's not really a good thing, really, but I mean, it makes him stand out. He lost all of the sets 7-5, so just made it a bit more interesting, basically. But 7-5, 7-6 to Isner in that match. And then it got really interesting in his next 3 matches, or I at least saw some of each of these 3 matches. And man, I'm so tired here, so apologies if I mess up and say things wrong, etc. But the Kyle Edmund match in round 4, Isner really struggled there, I feel, from what I saw. Edmund had massive opportunity in the first set to serve it out and was giving Isner trouble from the back of the court. Isner was struggling to land first serves. It just wasn't a fantastic set from either player, to be honest. It was, a lot of the time, it was about which player could hit the least errors in the key moments, and Edmund just wasn't able to hold his nerve and hold his tennis together to serve out that first set. That got Isner on the front foot and gave him more confidence, I think, to close out the match. But it was close all the way down the wire, and it just shows really Isner's mental strength to be able to step up and keep producing and keep going when players who are really talented off the ground, like Kyle Edmund, are pushing him close. Some controversial moments in the tiebreak, the final tiebreak of that match, which a lot of people seem to brush over, but it didn't have any bearing on the match. But a call from the chair umpire halted one of the points, saying that Kyle Edmund had gestured and stopped and therefore stopped the point completely, but actually Edmund gestured, which seemed to be out of Isner's eye line, carried on playing, got the next ball back in play, and then Carlos Bernardes, who was in the chair, stopped the point and awarded it to Isner, which gave him match point, and of course, being John Isner, he promptly aced. So I don't think Edmund was going to be making much difference in that set and that match anyway, but that was one I just wanted to comment on because it confused me that there weren't more people questioning that call, but there we go. So Isner moved into the quarterfinals to play Roberto Bautista Agut, who obviously took out Novak Djokovic for the second time this year. It was his second win over Novak Djokovic this year, and I think both times he at least came from a set down, but I'm pretty sure he came from a set and a breakdown, which is majorly impressive. Bautista Agut not got a standout weapon, but he's just so solid from the net with the forehand, able to dictate from the back of the court and just stay on level pegging when there's long rallies. And his consistency this year has just really been really interesting for me to watch. And most of the matches I watched, I feel, throughout the first few weeks of the season were Bautista Agut matches because he was performing so well and so consistently. But Isner, when he's having a good serving day, he's just that difficult to break, and got that one as well in 2 tiebreaks. And then his final double tiebreak victory, or his final double tiebreak victory so far, came over Felix Auger-Aliassime in the semi-finals. I've spoken about Auger-Aliassime, even stuttering over names I know now, on this channel several times before. 18-year-old Canadian, plays with a lot of firepower, really good at the net, quick around the court. He has a lot of strong elements to his game already in his early years, hence him getting to a Masters 1000 semi-final. He's not been around on the main tour long. I don't think many people would have known his name this time last year. His talents and his profile have been well protected growing up, helping him to be able to just focus on himself and on his game and progressing, and everything that's been done to help him is obviously paying off, because he did produce some great tennis against Isner, but just got tight at the end of both sets. Isner, I mean, he's been solid with the serve, with the net play, with the forehands, and definitely has earned his victories, but Auger-Aliassime, I feel, and he feels as well, I think, just got too tight at the back end of both sets, and Isner's experience showed, and I think experience has had a lot to say this tournament. We've seen rising stars making moves, but at the end of the day, we have 2 players who are well into their 30s in the final, and experience counts for a lot these days, especially on the men's tour, where the game is so physical, and so many hours are required in the gym, and long matches where only a few points at the end of them decide the outcome. So that's John Isner's path so far. Not much more I can say, not much more I can elaborate on. He's played great tennis. I'm very impressed that he's been able to just... He's almost been under the radar for a defending champion, just rolling through, just doing his thing, doing what's needed and getting himself through. And yeah, for a defending champion at the biggest event he's ever won, to be back into the final a year later, I think he's not really getting enough credit. To do it all in straight sets as well. Who cares if he won 9 tie breaks? It's still a proper tennis match. He's still earned his way to this final showdown, so all credit to John Isner in my opinion. Roger Federer, meanwhile, into the top 4 seeds, courtesy of Rafael Nadal's absence through injury. Federer is actually ranked world number 5, so that could have got very interesting if Nadal had been present and Federer had been outside of the top 4 seeds. Who knows who he would have been playing against. As it happened, Federer opened in round 2 against Radu Albots, which is a match that got a lot of attention. At that point in the tournament, Federer did not look likely to be headed to the final. Now, Radu Albot is a really good player, really nice guy as well. Met him last year, and he's been getting some of his best results so far in his career over the past few weeks. won his maiden ATP title, or at least reached the final. In my haze of tiredness, I'm forgetting exact stats, but Albot has really been climbing in recent weeks and displaying quite an intense all-court game and real consistency. And against Federer, he didn't seem to be caring that much about the name on the other side of the net. He was just stepping up and playing his game and doing things his way. Federer, on the other hand, shanking a lot, and we know what Federer making mishits and fluffing his ground strokes looks like. We see it from time to time. For a set and a half, he was struggling against Albot, trying to find his range, but obviously not really seeming sure of what he was doing or aiming for in the match. That was a very important match to come through. He trailed by a set and a break, and at the back end of the set was able to find his serve, was able to start landing his marks a bit, and once he'd pulled through that tight second set, he was able to roll a bit more through the deciding set, which proved very key. He's not dropped a set since, and following his match against Filip Krajinovic, where I think he still showed a little bit of rust, or whatever it is. It's not really rust because he reached the Indian Wells final, but in his first set against Filip Krajinovic, looked a little unconvincing in places again. Krajinovic was trying to step up and make some difference, but Federer came through in straights, and since then he has looked pretty imperious. Daniil Medvedev, I feel, is a very underrated member of the Rising Stars. He's got a great serve, really good serve, and good consistency from the baseline. He can pull out the slice and use it effectively, and he's very focused on the game and on his results, and Federer just swatted him aside 6-4, 6-2, and Medvedev has been playing some really good tennis this year, and last year especially had a good rise. So that was a good win for Federer, but nothing to, I don't know, it's not something to overhype. Yes, he beat Medvedev in straight sets. He should be beating Medvedev in straight sets. The most impressive result for me came in the quarterfinals against Kevin Anderson, their first meeting since the Wimbledon match, in which Federer led by 2 sets and match point and then lost in 5 sets. Now, that one was a shocker, and boy, did Anderson step up and play some really incredible, aggressive tennis. He was nailing his serve. He was just staying in the moment, swinging, finding the lines, opening up the court with the angles. And obviously, it was a much anticipated match. Anderson has produced really consistent tennis on the big stages since he reached the US Open final in 2017, I believe. Was that the Nadal one? He lost to Nadal in the final. I think it was 2017. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was. Yeah, and since then, consistent, reached the Wimbledon final last year, and has been a strong presence in the Masters 1000 draws. Federer won the first set 6-love, and Kevin Anderson was missing forehands left, right, and centre. It was kind of uncomfortable to watch at times because you don't tend to see the Kevin Anderson of today making those kinds of weak, sloppy errors. And I think actually a lot of it had to do with Federer's strategy. I almost feel that Federer has suddenly realised that the top players like it when he hits really cleanly to them from the baseline, because he's not always hitting away from them. Sometimes he's trying to construct the point and the other player is deciding to make their move first. Federer didn't really give Anderson the opportunity. He wasn't just striking deep to the baseline. His main tactic seemed to be to use the chip and slice to draw Anderson slightly into the courts, but also to keep the ball low. Anderson's a tall guy, and so he was struggling to keep low, keep himself over the ball, but also execute his shot. And that was where a lot of the forehand shanks and stuff were coming from. He was pulling out of his shot too early. He was unable to stay over the ball and get it over the net. And really, Federer was playing a strategically brilliant match there. He was trying something a bit different. He was taking into account what had gone wrong at Wimbledon and learning from experience. Even Federer, at the ripe old age of 37, as is often mentioned, and he's still learning. He's still learning from his mistakes, learning from past experiences, learning from instances where he's been outplayed and adjusting. And I thought that was a really tactically great match from Federer. He also proved some good mental strength at the back end of that match when Anderson found his first serve, which had been very much missing in that first set. It wasn't all about Federer forcing the errors. Anderson did just make some really bad mistakes. And Anderson found it again a bit in the second set, but Federer shut him off. He won the big game to get the 5-4 lead and then served it out. Kept it nice and simple. And then Denis Shapovalov, or Shapovalov, I'm not sure on the pronunciation here. I've been calling him Shapovalov for years. So if it is Shapovalov, then it's going to take some adjusting, let's put it that way. But Federer against the number 20 seed, the 19-year-old Canadian, two Canadian teenagers in the semis, and both of them incredibly exciting talents. Both of them have pretty full repertoires already, despite not having reached their 20s. Federer 6-2, 6-4, and Shapovalov's unforced errors in the early stages of that match were less to do with Federer's placement of the ball, and I think more to do with his own nerves and trying to adjust to the situation. He loves Federer. He's made that quite obvious, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's something that when a player gets on court, like with Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams, they are often able to put that out of their mind and still focus on what they want to achieve in the competition and go for it. But just too much for Shapovalov in that instance. And then in the second set, Federer just producing some exhibition-like stuff, really, when Shapovalov was constructing the points, coming to the net, Federer finding the amazing passes, just troubling him a lot. And yeah, another impressive win for Federer. So, one set drops between this pair heading into a Masters 1000 final, which I think is pretty impressive. So, who is going to come through in the final? Talk a bit about their games. We've mentioned quite a bit about how Federer is playing just by talking about his path to the final. He's adjusting according to the opponent he's playing, and I think he said himself that was part of his problem against Radu Albot. It wasn't a player he was as familiar with. He said that he was forgetting things that his coach had told him prior to the match, and he just didn't really have a firm game plan in mind ahead of, well, during that first set, during the first set and a half. Whereas with Kevin Anderson, it was very clear that he had a very specific game plan for that specific player. And I think that's definitely something he will have for Isner, because while Isner is difficult to beat if he's landing his first serves, if he's getting up to the net, he can also get quite predictable. People know that if he lands the big first serve, there is a strong likelihood he is going to come up to the net because he's such a tall guy. He can cover that net really well. I don't think that Isner's giving... Let's try that again. I don't think that Isner is given enough credit for his variety and the different things he's able to do on the court. I think of all the players on tour, Isner is renowned for being just a guy with a big serve. And I think, you know, back-to-back finals at the Miami Open, the Miami Masters, kind of speak for themselves. A few years ago, I would have said probably there isn't much more to John Isner than a serve, but actually his net play is great. His forehand, when he's landing it, is very powerful. He can hit the winner down the line. He can dictate with it. He's pretty solid with it. His backhand is decent, you know, so he's got a solid game off the ground, and the forehand and the net play are what he can really do damage with. He can use the backhand slice to stay steady in the rallies, but I just think that with the tendency to go to the net after the first serve, for example, the way he obviously wants the ball on his forehand wing, I think if he's missing first serves, that's going to give Federer the opportunity to take advantage of that. Federer is going to know the way that Isner wants to play. Whereas with Isner against Federer, Federer is currently proving that he can mix up his game and his game plan and his style to match the player that he's currently facing. So Federer is more unpredictable than Isner, and I think that he will bring a game plan for Isner, maybe similar to the Anderson match, so Isner would do well to pay attention to that. Isner, another big guy with a big serve, and Federer will probably bring out the chips and slices again, try and move Isner around, but not just move him around the court, but make him bend down as well and pull him out of position. So that's definitely something to look out for in this match. It's funny to say it, but I think that Federer might be the more likely, unless Federer's missing first serves. And I think that's something that Federer has struggled throughout the tournament. At certain points, his first serve has kind of gone on a wander, and I don't think that his opponents have taken enough advantage of that. But in general, if both of them are having, if both of them are having decent serving days, I would be more inclined to think that Federer is the guy most likely to break, because he knows what he's up against. Everyone knows going up against Isner that they're facing a massive serve. So obviously they're going to be well practiced on the return. They're going to know what to expect and they're going to be ready. And I think that Federer, with his ability to chip the ball back into play, to move quickly to get onto the next ball and get into a neutral rally, if he can just keep the errors low and stay in the moment, I think he's going to have good chances to break. So it's a good job I didn't have a lot of time to look up on stats, etc. ahead of this one, because I could sit here talking all night, but need to keep it nice and short. So I'll leave that there as far as the physical analysis goes. Let's have a quick look at the head-to-head between these two players. So Federer does lead 5-2. They haven't played since 2015. I can't believe it's been that long, but it has. Their last meeting was at a Masters 1000 event. It was the Paris Masters. John Isner won that clash. She did it 3 sets, won both the tie breaks, won either side of the 6-3 set that Federer won in the middle. So at the end of the day, tie-break consistency is going to come into this, which is where I doubt Federer a little bit, because it's consistency over a short period of time. And I think part of what Federer has been doing so well this tournament is winning the big points well. In the tiebreak, you can't do that. You have to be there from the first point all the way through to the last point. You can't just turn up and pull away when the point isn't so important. Every point absolutely counts in a tiebreak. And that's what Isner's so good at, being there for every single point of the tiebreak and taking advantage of what that format offers. So it's not to say that Federer wouldn't win a tiebreak. Actually, Federer has won, I think, most of the tiebreaks they've played, or maybe they've split them equally. Let me quickly count up. In their 7 meetings to date, Isner has won, and I'm taking note of this stat because I think I would be surprised if we don't see a single tiebreak in this match. Let's put it that way. Isner has won 1, 2, 3, 4 tiebreaks, and Federer has won 1, 2, 3, 4 tiebreaks, I believe. So it's even, 50-50 on the tiebreaks. And therefore, I think it's just going to come down to who's having the better day, which makes this one a tough one to predict, because both of them, since that first round or second round for Federer against Radu Albot, both of them have been looking pretty convincing. Now, if anyone follows me on Twitter, they will have seen me tweet the other day during the Federer match with Shapovalov about how I feel I'm being overly skeptical regarding Federer. I don't feel really that in the later stages of this tournament against the big players he's been pushed enough. And I make note of this because I feel that in recent times the pressure has told a bit more against Federer. Take, for example, his recent Indian Wells final. Maybe he wasn't expecting Thiem to come out and play such a brilliant match as he did, but it went right down the wire, and in the end it was Thiem who was able to be there in the most pressure moments. Stefanos Tsitsipas, he had a really close match with him, and there was really little between them, but it was Tsitsipas, the less experienced player, who was coming out on the right end of the big points. I just feel that when Federer isn't being pushed, it's easy for him to look brilliant because there are so many tools to his game and so many weapons in his game. The slice, the backhand down the line, the insanely angled winners at times, the passes. He can look brilliant if his opponents let him. Once his opponents start pushing him and keeping it close at the back end of sets, I think the pressure starts to tell a bit more and he gets a little bit more erratic, and that can have a lot to say about the outcome of a match. And with Isner's great serving at the moment, and with his consistency in tie breaks, and with his consistency at this tournament in general, I think that could put some pressure on Federer that he hasn't experienced yet. But then again, he was pushed hard by Albot. So let's have a think here. Let's have a think. I don't think that I have the bravery or the nerve to predict against Federer here, because basically at the end of the day, Federer is the better player of these two all round. I mean, Isner has the better serve, but if we're taking every component of their game, Federer is the better player. 20 Grand Slam titles say that. And I think I probably am being overly skeptical regarding Federer being pushed and how that might affect him. Obviously, he was a set and a break down in his second round and managed to come through that. Anderson came back fighting in the second set, and while he had a bit of help, Federer was able to hold him off. So I just feel like I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And also, I do find it hard to see Federer losing a second straight Masters 1000 final that he is probably the pretty clear favourite to win. It was a surprise that he lost to Thiem. Thiem played a great match, but I think, well, it will do one of two things. It will either make Federer more nervous in this situation, or it will make him wary and determined not to let that happen again. And I think I'm going to go with the latter. Earlier, instinctively, I wanted to go with Ashley Barty in straight sets. Didn't have the nerve to do that. I predicted her to win in 3. In this one, it's really hard to say, because if it goes to a tiebreak, then obviously Isner's got a great record in tiebreaks going, and you can't overlook that. So their most recent meeting was a 3-set meeting. It was a 3-set meeting at the US Open before that in the same year, 2015. Of their 7 meetings to date, 4 of those have extended beyond straight sets. But again, I mean, that's 3 that have been straight sets. So much is so close in this rivalry, but I can't back against Roger Federer in this particular matchup on this particular occasion. I can see Isner winning this match. I can see him defending this title. I think that he has the serve and the backup tools, the net play and the forehand again to get it done. But I also think that if Federer's landing his first serves, then he has the better chances of breaking, and I don't think he would want to let, well, of course he wouldn't want to let a second straight Masters 1000 final go, but I just think he'll be probably a bit more ready for this after the Indian Wells final. So I'm going to predict Roger Federer to win this title. I'm really not sure, I mean, how many sets, so I want to say straight sets, but I don't think I'm confident enough, which is terrible of me. But I will say, because John Isner has played such great tennis and hasn't dropped a set, I want to be kind to him and say 3 sets. This is very, I mean, this is why I pre-record, so if I deliberate like this, I can take it out of the video. We know where I'm saying Federer anyway. Federer to win, and let's say straight sets, because that's my instinct. I mean, Isner's probably going to win in 3 now, but we shall see. We shall see. Thank you, everyone, for watching this video, which, as usual, is far longer than I intended it to be. Hopefully, in the near future, as tennis comes to clay and to Europe, hopefully the time zones will be a little better and I can get these videos pre-recorded, edited, and shorter, and get them up for you to watch in good time ahead of the matches. Hopefully we'll be doing some more kind of roundup videos as well, looking back on matches as opposed to looking forward, and looking at some things that have happened off the match court as well, potentially. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see. Let me know what you think of this particular matchup, what you think the key elements of both players' games will be, and who you ultimately see coming through. Again, sorry I couldn't pre-record this, but I thought better stream it live than give you no video at all. So that's it from me for the Miami